Hey, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, sir?
Good. I was about to call you. I just typed up your phone number and it
Yeah.
just called at the same
And
time.
serendipity, serendipity.
Yes, sir. How is everything going today
It
with
was
you?
wonderful, wonderful. And yourself?
I can't complain. Just,
Excellent,
getting stuff done.
excellent.
hmm
All right, so let's talk about this offer here. So
Sure.
you are, I guess, a real estate company.
Yeah. So we're looking to buy rentals on credit financing. That's what we're looking to do.
Rentals on credit financing.
No, creative financing. So the
Oh,
offer that I
creative financing. Okay,
yes.
gotcha. Okay.
So so the offer that I made was a subject to offer where we will step in, take over your seller's existing mortgage payment if they're open to it. And
Mm-hmm.
if they have a little bit of equity, we're just gonna cash them out on closing. If they have significant amount of equity,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna make a down payment on their equity, and rest of their equity will be paid over time with a balloon on it. So, based on the cash flow we get, we don't mind sharing that with the seller. We make a down payment, of course, and then we just put a balloon on it and just, make a lump sum payment at the end of the balloon to make sure that they get full equity on their house. So that's
How
how
much
we,
is a little bit, and how much is too much that you would not be able to cash out fully?
I would say, I mean, for this particular house, that they have, let's say less than 10% equity, right? Let's just say, for example, right? We're just gonna catch them out if it's less than 10% equity on their side. But if it's like more of like, 50, 60,000, right? In that case, maybe what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a down payment, and then if we have cash flow on the house after we rent it out, which most houses do have, then we're just gonna make a monthly payment for it turns over a few years. It could be like 3 years, 5 years, or something like that, and we can just then write a check and pay rest of the equity or take out a HELOC on the house after that time, and just make sure that their equity is paid in. That's what we're
Okay,
gonna
so
do.
let's say we're looking at her numbers here in a second here. So you said approximate mortgage is 157. Let's round it up to 160 just to make it
Mhm.
even numbers that we're talking here. So
Right.
purchase price 220, approximating the mortgage at 160. That's
Mhm.
60K equity. So
Mhm.
you're saying in the case of 60K equity on that, that's like what, maybe 40%, 30%? Um
Mhm.
Roughly. I mean, it's definitely more than 10%.
Yeah,
So the
definitely.
50K, you're not looking to pay her a lump sum of 60,000. You're looking to pay a down payment and
hmm
then essentially finance the rest with her, correct?
Yeah, finance the rest with the balloon on it. So let's say
Right. So like a
after
five
we
one, a five
yeah,
one or uh-huh.
let's say we can rent it out. Let's say our mortgage payment every single month with HOA is 560 a month. So
Mhm.
that's quite a bit. But I know that
Yeah.
houses in that area could be rented for a good sum of money. So
Right, right, right.
the,
It could be
after
rented for, let's say, 2,000, maybe 19.
2000.
Right.
And then let's say her mortgage is about 1,000 with everything, and then with
Right.
the HOA and everything, let's say it's 1,500,
Mhm.
1,550, for
Right.
example.
Right.
So we have $450 coming into our pocket. Maybe we
Mhm.
can give a portion of that to her every single month, but we also have to have some cash flow coming in so that we can fight any vacancies that take place or any repair that needed in the house, right? We
Mhm.
are not hiring a property manager because we have people in the ground who can do stuff, right? Do anything that's required, right? And
Mhm.
then we can just make a portion of that as a monthly payment to the seller. And then, let's say in 3 years, we can just put it like a HELOC on, take a HELOC out on the house and just pay off the seller's mortgage, sorry, the equity amount, and rest and just keep paying the mortgage for like, let's say year 4, 5, 6, and then we could just refinance it when the rate comes down, or sell the condo after, let's say, 6 or 7 years, pay off this seller's mortgage, take the seller out of it.
Okay.
Uh,
So follow-up questions
Sure.
to that.
Mhm.
First one would be, how, what kind of guarantee or, um, sense of security does she have that since you're not really assuming the mortgage, you're just taking over payments, right? So
Mhm.
since you're legally not, um, transferring the obligation to yourselves, it's still her obligation to do all those things. What kind of legal assurances does she have that you would actually pay those things?
That's a great question. So the way the process work is on closing, we're gonna go through a title company, just like every single one of the transaction that you have, right? And on closing, the title the deed gonna transfer on our company name, the mortgage gonna stay on her name. And the way this title company, we work with specific title company because not every single title company can do this kind of paperwork. So the title company has state approved lawyer certified paperwork that basically says that after closing, our company is responsible for all the expenses that related to that. And we're going to be responsible for the mortgage payment, seller's equity, all that good stuff, HOA, everything related to the house. And during the time while we are making the mortgage payment in behalf of seller and this mortgage stays on seller's name, if we ever happen to default on a single mortgage payment, right, the seller can take the deed back on their name without any foreclosure. So after the closing takes place, we go through the closing process. Then our TC actually set up the mortgage servicing through a third-party mortgage servicing company. We work with a company called Western, and another one is Evergreen. They are nationwide, so they does all the mortgage servicing, and they keep all the party posted. So every single month, they will come to our bank account, whether the house is rented or not. It's not their business. They're gonna pull out the money from our account, and then they're going to make sure that the seller's equity amount and the mortgage payment is made, right? And they will send a letter to the seller and us to make sure that all parties are in good stand. If we ever default on a single payment, which never happened, right, between me and my partner, because this is what we are specialized on. The mortgage servicing company will reach out to the seller and they will send an email to the seller, let them know, hey, your buyer is in the default, means that we couldn't take out the money. They don't have enough cash in their bank account.
Is
Contact
the
with them.
wait, wait, wait. Is the mortgage company aware of the sale?
Which mortgage company? The seller's mortgage company? Your
Correct.
seller's mortgage company?
Correct.
So seller's mortgage company, if you don't want to make them aware, it's not they don't have to be aware because
Wait, so then who calls the seller?
who calls the seller? What do you mean? Who calls the seller?
You said that if you were to miss a payment,
Right.
the company would call the seller.
So we
But
use
what
a
company?
third party mortgage servicing company.
Oh, your mortgage servicing company. Okay. Uh-huh.
Right. So we don't ask the seller, hey, give me your mortgage lender's information so we can make the payment directly. We would do everything through a third party mortgage servicing company so that every single parties are um, up to date and stay safe. So if we call in default means that we don't make payment.
Right.
Mortgage servicing company gonna reach out to the seller and we'll ask the seller to tell them like, hey, try to speak to your buyer and see if you can remedy the situation. And if they can't, then the mortgage servicing company can walk the seller through the process of filing documentation with the county in order to take the house back on their name. Or they can contact with the title company, which we're gonna close with, and they're gonna just walk them through. In that case, seller has uh, letters and the email as a proof that we have defaulted, and we pay the mortgage servicing company, not your seller, by the way. We pay them for doing all that just to make sure that all parties are safe. And when we pay off let's say we sell the house at the 8 year five, right?
Mm-hmm.
The mortgage servicing company also gonna make sure that that mortgage is paid, and they're gonna send a final email to your seller, let them know that hey, the mortgage has been paid in full. You are no, and your equity gonna be sent to your account as well. The transaction is done and you are out of the whole thing. Means that your equity payment has been made and your mortgage has been paid in full. So that's how we do the process. If we ever default, they can just take the house back. They don't owe us anything. All the down payment and everything that he paid, all the improvement that he made on the house throughout the time, the seller can take advantage of that. So, how our motivation is way more higher than the seller, that they can take the house back. So whether or not they have people we have a tenant in the house, we'll make sure that we stay up to date with the mortgage payment and all expenses. Okay.
Okay. All right. And so how would this process work? So, to me, this is not like your typical
Yeah.
um purchase and sales agreement. I mean, at that point, because we're not going to execute any of the, I mean, we're not going to record any of this because if you record it, then, the first mortgage company will, immediately call upon the due on sale clause.
Okay. So here's the explanation of how the process actually works. We actually do execute it, right? We go through
No,
the
you
title company.
execute it, but you don't record it.
We execute and record it through the
You do
title company.
record.
And then we have had that scenario when the due on sale clause called upon us as well. So the thing is, the deed and the mortgage is two separate things when somebody buys the house. And those are tied up by the promissory note. Okay.
Correct.
And the mortgage servicing company, they are not in the business of taking over the house. They are in
Right.
the business of making sure that they're getting their interest payment and they make money off of your monthly payment.
Right.
Okay. So
Right.
we have had the scenario, majority of our scenario, we never had doers of called on us after we went through the process of executing everything, put out all the paperwork. We had situation where they did call on do or sell on us. Okay. And in that case, our TC actually called the mortgage servicing company and the lenders, and they showed them, look, we put a paperwork in place to buy the house through subject to, and subject to is not something that we are just inventing right now. It is part of the HUD document if you look at it. So we told that lender that we actually purchased the house through subject to. We'll make sure that the mortgage payment will be made in the seller's behalf. And if you ever miss a single payment, and this is how your seller is protected, they can take the house back and they can remedy the situation. And in that case, in most cases, the lenders are okay with it. They just freaks out because they're like, okay, they sold the house, but they didn't pay the mortgage. Who is this company? Who did you sell it to? And why didn't you just pay it off? If that ever arises, it's very rare, right? It arises like twice in our case. As long as they get the payment, they don't really bother. We just talk to them, submit the documentation, send them the documentation that shows that everything is documented, and this is how we're gonna make sure that mortgage payment will be made. And most of the time, if the lender is like a mid-sized lender to like a big name lender, they are totally fine with it. They just want to make sure that they get paid. Okay. But if it's a small lender, sometimes what they do is they just make fuss about it. They're like, oh, you have to pay the mortgage back, which never happened to us. I know one of my buddy had that issue. In that case, we have other workaround. We can then deed the house back and purchase it through an executory contract. Where you mentioned that we're not going to go through the process of buying the house, and we're going to buy the house. It's going to be recorded on the title label, but it's not going to be um what is it called? Recorded. Sorry, it's going to be recorded through the title, but not going to be executed on the county level. He did that basically. The dual cell called on him. He called the lender, did not work out. He did the house back, and he just bought it on the executory contract, and he is still making payment. That the day he's gonna be able to pay off the mortgage in full, that's the time he's just gonna execute his right with the county to make sure that he is the sole owner of the house. But in our case, when two times they called on a dual cell, all we did just picked up the phone, called the lender, submit the documentation, and everything was sorted out. Because we actually use a third party servicing company, so they see that as like, hey, it's not like we are just getting into the seller's account and making payment and seller is not aware of it. We want to make sure that everybody is aware of it,
Mhm.
that the payment. Not
Okay.
sure if I confused you or you have any additional question.
No, 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 no. You didn't confuse me. I understand it. It's very similar to a program we've already agreed to, which is the Home Light program. Have you ever heard of Home Light?
Yeah, I heard of Homelight, but I don't know if Homelight does creative financing. Do they?
That they don't do what?
Do they do creative financing? Or I know that Homelight has a program for buying houses on cash. I'm not really sure if they have like a creative financing subject to type of offer. Do they
Yes,
have them?
it's very similar. It's very
Oh, it's
similar.
okay,
Yes.
okay,
So what they do is they will do the assumption and
okay,
they actually, transfer the ownership or the obligation over to the buyer. And
Okay.
then if the buyer doesn't have enough money to, um, pay off the equity that's
Mm-hmm.
missing, then they supply the equity themselves to the buyer. And then
Gotcha.
that equity becomes like a second mortgage onto the property.
Mm-hmm.
And they just manage everything through the first mortgage and themselves, between themselves and the buyer.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I never heard of that one.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's very similar to what you're doing. And she's already comfortable with this idea of home lights. So this may be something she's comfortable with, but I will have to run it by her.
Sure.
And if I have any other questions, I assume I can reach you at this number.
Yeah, or what I can do is if the seller wanna see a solid offer with the numbers on it,
Yep,
what you can do is maybe you can let me know. I need a few pieces of information on their mortgage, like their mortgage balance, PITI, as well as the maturity date. If I can get those three pieces of information, I believe they don't have any arrears. I can present a formal offer, and after I make the offer, if the seller wanna hop on a three-way phone call, which is what I do like multiple times a week.
sure.
I'm more than happy to, schedule a time where you can maybe like do like a three-way call and, add them in. They can ask many questions to see if it's a solution for them. Because, we are not just buying a house, we're actually getting into a relationship in some sort of
Right,
way. So if they're open to it.
right.
So
Right.
we can definitely do that.
Um, okay, so just so that I understand the clear understanding of the basics, I want to recap for you what I understood.
Sure.
And then I also have a couple of follow-up questions within that, just because of your offer. I want your LOI. I want to make sure that, they're kind of like in the same light. Can you hold on one second?
Absolutely.
You there, Mohammed?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. So here's what my understanding, and then follow-up questions as I was mentioning.
Right.
So we're currently asking 220, and your desire is to pay the equity from that 220 to whatever she owes currently on her mortgage, and you would then take over the payments to the mortgage. Since the amount is greater than 10%, you would be giving a down payment, not the full equity initially. The rest of the equity you would be paying over the course of time. And that time would be determined between you and the seller in order to get the full equity. You also would pay the realtor commission of 3%,
Mhm.
and you're looking for a 10-day inspection period. Closing days, 30 days or less. You're going to do an as-is purchase. That's fine. Buyer's choice of escrow. You can put your escrow wherever. That's fine. That makes sense. Exact vesting to be determined during escrow. Buyer pays all reasonable closing costs. Buyer, yeah, and I imagine the seller pays for some seller closing costs at some point.
No, we cover both sides, seller
Oh,
and the
you
buyer.
cover both sides. Okay, okay.
Right.
The seller may leave any unwanted items in the home upon closing. Okay, great. So I see here buyer will take over any solar panel payment. I'm assuming that's because you're referencing the PACE loan where they've taken some loans out and then it's attached to the property taxes. Is that correct?
That specific line is for those who actually have a solar on the house. So we actually purchased two houses this year. One in Barstow, California, and another house we are actually working on in Texas. They both have solar panel, and there is a balance of like 23 or 25,000 on each one of them. We
Mm-hmm.
just take over that payment along with the mortgage payment. So
Mm-hmm.
after closing, we can just talk to the solar company and tell them that hey, we gotta be the new owner, and we are going to be making the payment in behalf of the seller right now.
Yeah, but
So
you're only doing that because it's attached to their property taxes, right?
yes, and the property tax and the property, yes, both.
Right, right, right. Okay. So, during the discovery process of this condo, you'll find out that there is indeed a special assessment that's currently in place. On top of the 560, it's about 13,000 total. Um, would that consider a part of you guys are okay with paying that monthly over the solar panels, or would you want the seller to pay that off from her equity? And
So,
really that means you guys would end up paying it, just, it would be subtracted from the equity that you owe her, is my question.
okay. So I have, in this scenario, I have two questions. Okay. The
Yeah.
first question is, does this condominium has a solar panel?
No,
But
no, no,
like,
it's not solar panels.
okay, so but the assessment, is it a part of the mortgage she owes or is it a separate loan? That's my question.
Separate. It's a separate payment made to the association.
Made to the association.
Correct.
Okay. So we can take that over and we can make the monthly payment. As I mentioned, everything that you explained is correct so far.
Okay. Okay.
The only thing that the seller have to understand is our offer is going to be based off of the cash flow that we can get from this house. So
Okay.
the mortgage payment, HOA, and let's say the assessment need to be less than the rental rate per month. Okay,
Of course. Of course.
that's the first thing that they need to do. And the
Of
second thing
course.
is the second payment, the monthly second payment that we're gonna make for the seller's equity. That is absolutely correct. We typically add a balloon period on that equity, so
Mhm.
they're not gonna be getting paid in like 10 years. So maybe
Right.
they're gonna get paid in a couple years, depending on how much equity they have, maybe 3, 5 years. We can just put that
Okay.
balloon on it, and then we can just make a single payment just to make sure that they get paid early. That's our goal. Okay. So yeah, for the
Understood.
assessment, how we're gonna do the calculation is we're gonna look at the mortgage balance plus the assessment minus the listing would be the equity amount in the house, which
Say
is
that
what
say
is
that one more time. I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
mortgage
Hmm.
balance
Yep.
plus the assessment
Uh-huh.
minus the listing price gonna be the seller's equity.
Correct.
And if we are taking over that assessment payment per month, we're gonna add that with the PITI and the HOA to make sure that we can still cash flow if we're making all the payment.
Of course.
Okay,
Of course. Of course.
so that's how we're gonna do it.
Okay, great. I totally understand. And last thing. So the realtor commission, you're paying that at this closing that you guys have between you and the seller, correct?
That so
At
you
the
are
title
you are
transfer.
representing the seller, correct? Right
Yeah,
now on this transaction. So we're
yeah.
gonna cover your 3% commission. We don't have any
Hmm.
buyer's agent. So we're gonna go unrepresented. And if you are okay with, if you and your brokerage is okay with our paperwork, we're gonna involve our TC who's gonna actually do all the paperwork to make sure that we have all the legalities in place. They also knows which title company we need to close with, who does this kind of transaction because it's not usual, right? So they're gonna handle all the paperwork to make sure that
Yeah, it has to
your
be
three
yours.
percent is
Of
covered.
course. Of course.
Yeah.
It has to be your title company. Of course.
Yeah.
And that's
So,
fine. That's normal for any buyer's transaction.
yes, sir.
Okay, great. I understand everything, and that commission was just paid at the closing between
Yes.
you and the seller, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Great, great, great. Which is better for the seller, I think, because then she
Yeah.
has a down payment plus you guys are a 3% commission
Yeah.
in the hole, so to
That
speak.
that
Exactly.
that's correct. So that's our selling proposition. We'll cover 3% commission, which is going to be outside of that. Not going to be within the listing price, and we're going to pay
Hmm.
all the closing costs for both parties as long as you can
Understood.
support the terms.
Understood. All right. And then in the event that if you were to default for whatever reason, obviously commission is not refundable.
Nothing is refundable. Let's say if we default in like year 5, right, and we made significant improvement on the house, we lose everything
Right.
basically.
Right.
No commission, no down payment, nothing is refundable. Seller get to keep it all, as well as take over the deed and resell the house if they wish to, or leave in it, whatever they want to do.
Got it. Totally understandable.
Mhm.
Okay. Sounds good. I will present this information to the seller and I'll let you guys know.
Sounds good. I'll be waiting to hear from you.
Sounds good. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot, man. Have a good day.
Pleasure. Bye.
Bye.